Welcome to the deep dive. Ever stumble on something so strange and delightful you just have to tell someone? Buckle up because we're diving into a children's book about a cat who becomes, wait for it, the President of the United States.
And it's not some dystopian future or a biting political satire either. The Purr-fect President, this is the book, by the way, it's about a totally average house cat who somehow becomes a surprisingly effective leader.
Okay, so paint the picture for us. Who is this unlikely commander-in-chief?
So we meet Mister Meow, just your everyday house cat living in Washington, D.C. with his owner, Mrs. Jenkins. He's living the dream, naps, snacks, chasing the occasional laser pointer, the good life. Zero interest in politics, which is, I think, a brilliant move by the author, Mike Seirots.
I'm intrigued. Why is that a brilliant move?
Well, by making Mister Meow the opposite of a politician, Seirots lets us see what happens when someone with absolutely zero experience ends up in the highest office. It really makes you wonder if we overthink this whole leadership thing.
Okay, so we've got this average house cat, completely content with his life of leisure. How on earth does he end up on the presidential ballot?
It's actually kind of vague how it happens, but somehow Mister Meow's name ends up on the ballot, and, well, I think a lot of us can relate to what happens next.
Oh, do tell.
People were just over it, exhausted by the same old politicians, the broken promises, the constant bickering. Seirots really captures that feeling of voter fatigue. People were desperate for something different, anything different, even if it meant voting for, well, a cat.
So are we talking about a protest vote here? Did people think voting for a cat was some kind of statement?
I think it started as a joke, right? Like the Meow for President campaign, their big promise was mandatory belly rubs. It's hilarious. And of course it went viral because, well, the internet. But then it snowballed. It turned into this whole movement.
Wow, the power of memes.
Exactly. And Seirots uses that to show how quickly public opinion can shift in the age of social media. What starts as a funny meme can turn into a tidal wave, completely disrupting traditional politics.
All right, don't leave me hanging. What happens next? Do people actually vote for Mr. Meow?
Mr. Meow wins. Landslide victory.
You're kidding. A cat president, seriously. What happens next? Does the country just fall apart? Are there scratching posts in the Oval Office now?
Well, that's the beauty of this book. Seirots uses all those humorous images, to make us think we're in for a silly, lighthearted ride. But then he flips the script and things get really interesting.
Okay, so picture this. Mr. Meow, this totally average house cat, is now calling the shots in the Oval Office. I can't help but imagine, utter chaos.
Oh, Seirots doesn't disappoint there. He describes, the initial pandemonium, a cat in the White House, feline friends advising on, matters of state. It's quite a sight to imagine. But, and here's a twist, in the middle of all this hilarious mayhem, Mr. Meow starts showing these surprisingly, well, effective leadership qualities.
Hold on, really? So it's not all just claw marks on the Resolute desk and catnip in the Oval Office? What kind of a leader does this Mr. Meow, this cat president, turn out to be?
He's definitely not your typical politician, I'll give you that. Mr. Meow is, well, for one, remarkably calm. He's observant and, believe it or not, even charismatic in his own way. You know how those leadership books are always telling you to keep a cool head, especially when things get tough?
Yeah, stay calm under pressure. That's the mantra, right?
Right. Well, Mr. Meow seems to have mastered that without even reading a single self-help book. He doesn't get caught up in all the drama, all the political maneuvering. He just, leads.
That's pretty remarkable, especially when you think about how rare that kind of calmness is in real-world politics. I mean, it's always about the next scandal, the next election cycle. It's exhausting.
Absolutely. But Mr. Meow, he's not driven by any of that. Seirots portrays him as this calming presence, even amidst the craziness of Washington. He's not the loudest voice in the room, but he observes, he listens to what his advisors have to say, and then he makes a decision.
It reminds me of that saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Maybe that's Mr. Meow's secret to success.
Maybe it is. And Seirots, he plays with that idea brilliantly. He takes these, cat-like qualities that we might usually just laugh at, being calm, being observant, and he shows how these traits, they can actually be real strengths in a leader.
It's almost like Mr. Meow, this accidental president, stumbles upon a whole new and weirdly effective way to lead. Less talking, way more listening, and let's be real, probably a lot more napping.
And it's not just about the calmness factor either. Seirots really highlights Mr. Meow's charisma too, but it's not the in-your-face, loud kind of charisma.
Right. It's more like subtle. I don't know. They have that certain something that makes you want to be around them, to please them.
Exactly. It's like, in the book, even seasoned politicians, they're drawn to Mr. Meow. They're just disarmed by his quiet confidence, by his genuine interest in what they have to say. And it's not something he's putting on, you know? It's just who he is.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if those were the qualities we valued in our leaders? What if, instead of always going for the loudest voice, the most aggressive debater, we looked for those quieter, maybe even more understated qualities instead?
It is a refreshing thought experiment, isn't it? What if we judged our leaders not by their speeches or their promises, but by their ability to listen, to find common ground, to just stay focused on what matters?
So we have a cat president, and surprisingly, it's working. But what about the country? Is everyone walking around with yarn instead of briefcases? Are we all on a diet of tuna and catnip now?
Well, Seirots doesn't go quite that far, but he describes a country that's actually thriving under President Meow. The economy is booming, those long-standing political battles resolved. It's like, dare I say it, people are actually happy.
Wow, that's almost unthinkable. It really makes you wonder, could real-world politics actually learn a thing or two from a cat president?
I think so, but we have to remember this is an allegory. Seirots isn't saying we literally need to elect a cat. He's using Mister Meow to challenge us to look at what we really think makes a good leader.
So it's like he's holding up a mirror, right?
Right.
Showing us our own biases. We see a cat, and we just automatically assume incompetence. But what if, and stay with me here, what if we're the ones who are missing something?
Exactly. What if instead of focusing on resumes and years of experience, we thought about the qualities that Mr. Meow embodies, like his calmness, being open-minded, genuinely listening to people?
It's a pretty radical idea. So in the book, how does it all end? What's Mr. Meow's legacy as president?
Well, the book ends with Mr. Meow finishing his term, leaving behind this legacy of unity. And, get this, happiness. It does feel a little like a fairy tale, but it makes you wonder, did Mr. Meow change the presidency, or did the presidency change him?
That is a great question. And did Seirots ever say what he thinks?
You know, he leaves that for the reader to decide. But it's clear that Mr. Meow, who started as this totally ordinary house cat, well, he rose to the occasion, he learned, he adapted, maybe even discovered something about himself along the way.
That's fascinating. But for those of us who aren't cat